Picture yourself settling in, maybe with a fan humming softly, or a blanket pulled just right. Tonight we're diving into a parade of royal mishaps, kings, queens and emperors who ruled with pomp but exited in ways that'd make you wince or chuckle. These were folks draped in gold commanding armies, yet their final moments, less throne, more throne room blunder. From a dessert binge to a literal misstep, their stories remind you, no crown saves you from life's cruel jests. So dim the lights, maybe hit that like button if you're feeling it, and drop a comment, where are you and what's the clock saying? It's wild to think who's out there from Tokyo to Timbuktu joining this odd history ride. Now let's ease into the chaos of royalty meeting their maker in the most undignified ways. You ready? Here's the first tale, and trust me, it's a sweet one, literally. Imagine a frosty February night in 1771, Stockholm's air sharp enough to sting your nose. King Adolf Fredrik, Sweden's well-meaning but not exactly world-shaking monarch, sits at a table groaning under the weight of excess. He's had a day of signing papers, maybe dodging a courtier's gossip, and now he's treating himself. Lobster, caviar, sauerkraut, smoked herring, each dish a little richer than the last, washed down with champagne that fizzes like his royal ego. But the real star semler, these sweet cardamom-laced rolls stuffed with almond paste and swimming in whipped cream and warm milk, are his weakness. One's a delight, two's a stretch. Adolf, he downs 14. You can almost hear the servants' whispers, their eyes widening, as he waves off their timid "Your Majesty." Perhaps a pause. Cream clings to his lips, his wig tilts just a bit, and he's all in spoon after spoon, a man on a mission. By evening his stomach rebels. Cramps twist into agony, then collapse. Official word, digestive issues. Unofficial truth. He ate his way to eternity. His reign decent stable gets overshadowed by this sugary suicide. Next time you eye a third slice of cake, picture Adolf spoon in hand and maybe just step away. Up next, a king who found the privy less private than he hoped. It's a crisp October morning in 1760, and King George II of Great Britain pushing his late 70s wakes with a slight grumble in his gut. The palace hums with its usual rhythm, servants polishing silver courtiers plotting in hushed tones. George, ever the creature of habit, sips his morning tea, mutters about the weather and shuffles through his routine. Then, as all mortals must, he heads to the privy. Not some draughty outhouse, mind you, but a gilded affair, likely with porcelain gleaming and a velvet cushion for royal comfort. You can picture him settling in, maybe humming a tune from last night's banquet, expecting a moment of peace. But fate has other plans. Mid-business his heart betrays him. An aortic aneurysm, a silent rupture in his body's main artery. He slumps gone before he hits the floor. Servants alerted by the thud rush in their faces, a mix of horror and disbelief. The King of England, Elector of Hanover. Defender of the faith caught with his breeches down. The official report calls it a heart issue, which isn't a lie, but the court gossip. Oh, it spreads like wildfire. No ballads will sing of this, no portraits will immortalise the scene. George's wars, his empire, his reforms, all eclipsed by a throne of a different kind. So next time you're in a rush to judge a bad day, spare a thought for George, who proved even kings can't escape life's most human moments. Up next, a Viking who learned the hard way even the dead can bite back. Rewind to the 9th century where the wind howls across the rugged Orkney Isles, and Sigurd, the mighty Earl of Orkney, carves his name in blood and glory. This Viking's a proper Norse tough guy, raiding, conquering, leaving a trail of trembling foes. His latest victory, a Scottish chieftain, Mael Brigti, lies dead. His head lopped off in a show of Viking bravado. Sigurd, never one for subtlety, ties the grisly trophy to his saddle, its teeth glinting in the sun. You can almost smell the salt air, hear the creak of leather as he rides smug with triumph. But here's where the gods start chuckling. As his horse jogs along, Mael's head bounces and one of those teeth still sharp, Manu scrapes Sigurd's leg. Just a nick barely worth a grunt. In today's world, a dab of antiseptic and he'd be fine. But this is the 9th century where infections don't play nice. The scratch festers, turns angry, and soon Sigurd's burning with fever. The mighty warrior who dodged swords and spears is laid low by a dead man's bite. He dies probably cursing the irony as his men untie the head and wonder if it's cursed. No saga will gloss over this one, Sigurd the warlord undone by a tooth. Makes you think twice about keeping souvenirs. Next, a prince who found a rice chest less cosy than it sounds. Step into the stifling heat of a Korean summer July in the 18th century, where the air hangs heavy with palace intrigue. Crown Prince Sado, heir to the Joseon throne, is a young man born to rule, but unravelling under the weight of his own mind. His behaviour, erratic, violent, whispered about in shadowed corridors, paints him as a liability. Servants flinch at his sudden rages. Courtiers dodge his midnight wanderings, sword in hand, muttering to unseen foes. His father, King Yongjo, a Confucian stickler for order, faces a grim choice: a son too dangerous to keep, too royal to kill outright. Execution would stain the dynasty's honour, so Yongjo opts for a darker path. He orders Sado sealed inside a wooden rice chest, the kind used to store grain, squat and unyielding. No ventilation, no water, just the prince, the box, and the merciless sun. You can almost hear the creak of the lid closing, the muffled protests fading into silence. For 8 agonising days, Sado endures his fate, a whispered scandal. When the chest is opened, the prince is gone, his death officially cloaked as divine judgment. But let's call it what it was, a slow, suffocating end boxed in by politics and paternal pride. Sado's son Jongjo later rises as a great king, but the rice chest lingers in history's margins, a grim reminder that even royalty can be crushed by family drama. Next, a king who laughed his way to the grave. It's 1410 in Aragon, and King Martin, nearing the end of his reign, is having a rough day. His stomach's been staging a revolt, chronic indigestion, the kind that sends courtiers scurrying from the royal flatulence. Confined to his bed, he's bloated, cranky, and in desperate need of a pick-me-up. Enter the court jester summoned to lighten the mood with a quick quip. The room's dim candles flickering the air thick with the smell of medicinal herbs and goose grease. Martin, propped on pillows, demands a joke. The jester, ever the professional, spins a tale. Why'd I take so long? Your Majesty saw a deer hanging from a fig tree by its tail. Divine punishment, maybe. It's not comedy gold, but Martin's been stewing in misery for weeks. Something about the absurdity, the deer, the tale, the sheer randomness cracks him open. He laughs, a deep, wheezing bellow that shakes his frame. Then he keeps laughing harder, gasping, clutching his gut. The court watcher's smiles fading as the king's mirth turns to distress. He collapses, face still twisted in a grin, dead from a mix of indigestion and unstoppable giggles. The official report mumbles about stomach woes, but history whispers the truth. Martin laughed himself out of this world. His death sparks a succession mess, but no one can mention it without a stifled snort. Makes you wonder if humour's the real killer. Next, an emperor who chased immortality and found poison instead. Travel back to 3rd century BCE China, where Emperor Qin Shi Huang I, to unify the land rules, with an iron grip and a wild dream to never die. This is the man who standardised coin, script and roads, who built the terracotta army to guard his soul in the afterlife. But Qin's not banking on clay soldiers alone, he wants immortality, and he wants it now. His court alchemists, eager to please, concoct a shimmering solution, mercury pills sold as the elixir of eternal life. You can picture the emperor robes sweeping the palace floor, swallowing these toxic beads daily, their metallic glint promising forever. The air smells of incense and ambition, but beneath it a faint whiff of doom. Slowly his health frays, paranoia creeps in his temper, flares, and he vanishes on secretive quests for more magical fixes. On one such trip, inspecting eastern lands for mythical herbs, he collapses, poisoned by the very cure he trusted. His court in a panic hides the death parading his corpse in a fish-stinking wagon to mask the rot. Qin, who feared death above all, ends up fermenting beside seafood. His tomb, still sealed, might swim with mercury rivers, a fitting grave for a man who chased eternity and found irony instead. Next time you're tempted by a quick fix, remember Qin and his glowing pills. Up next, a pope who sinned his way to a scandalous end. It's 955 AD, and Rome's a hot mess of faith and filth. Enter Octavianus, barely 18-crowned Pope John XII before he's old enough to grow a decent beard. The Vatican should be a beacon of holiness, but under John it's more like a rowdy tavern. Picture the papal palace wine stains on marble dice rolling across sacred texts and whispers of toasts to the devil during Mass. This kid's not just bending rules, he's smashing them. He ordains a 10-year-old bishop, blesses mistresses, and turns the Lateran into a den of debauchery. You can almost hear the monk's quills snapping in embarrassment. Then comes his end, and it's as unholy as his reign. Mid-affair with a married woman tangled in sheets that don't belong to him, John suffers a stroke and drops dead. No altar, no prayer, just a scandalous gasp and a very awkward exit. The Vatican tight-lipped never confirms the tale, but chroniclers can't resist. Was it true or a smear to tarnish a reckless pope? Either way, it sticks. John's decade of chaos blurs the line between sacred and sinful, leaving history to gossip over his unhallowed fall. Makes you wonder what the eulogy skipped. Next, a king who met his match in a monkey brawl. It's 1920 and Greece teeters on a political knife edge, with young King Alexander barely into his 20s sitting on a throne he didn't quite choose. His father's in exile, and Alexander's more a crowned placeholder than a ruler navigating a court thick with schemers. One sunny afternoon, he's strolling the royal gardens, his loyal dog trotting beside him, the air sweet with olive blossoms. Then chaos erupts. A Barbary macaque, some palace worker's ill-advised pet, lunges at the dog, all teeth and temper. You can hear the snarls, see the dust kick up as Alexander, ever the pet parent, dives in to break it up. Bad move. A second monkey joins the fray, and suddenly the king's leg is a pincushion for primate bites. The wounds seem minor, patch him up, send him on his way. But this is 1920 and infections don't care about crowns. Days later, the bites fester, gangrene creeps in, and sepsis claims him within 3 weeks. A monkey brawl fells the king, sparking a constitutional crisis and his father's return. The press, unsure how to spin bitten by monkeys, mumbles about sudden illness, but the truth slips out. Alexander's short reign fades, but his death, it's trivia gold. Makes you think twice about messing with nature's little terrors. Next, a king who went up in flames, quite literally. Picture the late 14th century in Navarre, where King Charles II, nicknamed the Bad for his scheming ways, lies bedridden, his body a wreck from years of betrayals and bad vibes. The palace smells of damp stone and dubious remedies, as medieval doctors, armed with more guesswork than skill, decide to wrap him head to toe in linen soaked in brandy. The logic. Warm the king, draw out the sickness, maybe pickle him back to health. You can see the servants' sceptical glances as they swaddle their monarch like a royal burrito, sewing him into this boozy cocoon. Night falls, and a lone servant working by candlelight leans in to snip the final thread. The flame kisses the brandy-drenched cloth, and whoosh, Charles goes up like a torch. Screams echo, nobles faint in the halls, and by the time the flames are doused, the king's a charred tragedy. The official story mutters about illness, but history snickers. Charles, the bad plotter of 1,000 downfalls, was barbecued by a clumsy nurse and a candle. His fiery end proves even the craftiest can't outsmart a spark. Next, a king who found the privy a deadly seat. It's 1016, and England's a battlefield with King Edmund dubbed Ironside for his stubborn grit, locked in a brutal dance with Danish invaders led by King Nut. For 7 months, Edmund's been a lion, rallying men, shrugging off defeats, dodging betrayal like arrows. The air's thick with mud and ambition, and after a long campaign he finally steals a moment of quiet in the privy. Not a fancy setup, just a wooden seat over a cesspit, the kind that smells of earth and regret. You can picture him armour off, humming a war tune, thinking he's earned this brief pause. But medieval rumours, juicy and grim, say death was waiting below. A killer knowing Edmund's habits hides in the pit, dagger poised. As the king settles, a blade strikes upward, gruesome precise, and oh so undignified. The story's murky. Some say he died of battle wounds, others whisper of private treachery. Yet the privy tale with its cesspit assassin sticks like mud to a boot. No royal mural will show this, no saga will sing of a king felled mid-relief. Edmund's iron side couldn't shield his softest spot, proving even legends are mortal where plumbing's involved. Next, a king who loved eels a bit too much. Fast forward to 1135. Normandy's chill air biting through the castle walls. King Henry the Fun of England, tough old ruler, who's outlasted wars, rebellions and barons' schemes, sits down to a feast that smells like trouble. On the menu, lamprey's slimy jawless eels with mouths like nightmares, boiled and piled high. Henry loves them, can't get enough, despite his doctor's warnings that these greasy sea worms are hard on the gut. You can see him fork in hand, ignoring the nervous glances of his court, the table creaking under the weight of his obsession. Rich food, he scoffs. I'm a king, not a peasant. He digs in, devouring far too many, the kind of excess that makes your stomach wince just thinking about it. Hours later, agony hits, cramps, vomiting a fever that burns through his royal stubbornness. Within days, he's gone food poisoning, claiming what swords never could. His body carted back to England in winter's grip doesn't fare well, but that's a grim tale for another time. Henry's 3-decade reign, ruthless capable, gets eclipsed by a plate of eels. Next time you're eyeing an extra helping hear Henry's ghost whisper, maybe don't. Up next, a king who got too close to his own cannon. It's 1460 and the Scottish air crackles with gunpowder and ambition outside Roxburgh Castle, an English stronghold ripe for the taking. King James II, just 29, is a firebrand with a temper shorter than a fuse and a love for the shiny new toys of war cannons. These cast-iron beasts, loud and unpredictable, are his pride, and he's itching to show them off. Picture him striding through the siege-camped kilt, swaying the smell of smoke and sweat in the air, ordering a grand demonstration. He plants himself front row close enough to feel the ground shake, grinning like a kid with a new sword. What could go wrong? Plenty, it turns out. As the cannon roars, it doesn't just fire, it explodes a spectacular burst of metal and flame. A jagged shard tears through James's thigh, nearly severing it, blood soaking the earth before he can blink. He's gone almost instantly, his attendants frozen in shock, ears ringing with the blast. The Scots rally, eventually taking the castle renamed James's Castle. In a grim nod, but the king's enthusiasm for artillery outran his sense of safety. His reign, bold and modernising, ends as a cautionary tale. Even kings should respect a cannon's personal space. Next, an emperor too wild for Rome's taste. Step into Rome 218 AD, where a 14-year-old named Varius Avitus Bassianus tries saying that 5 times fast becomes Emperor Elagabalus handed a throne and a world of trouble. This teen doesn't just rule. He redefines chaos. Picture the imperial palace, rose petals raining on guests until some choke a horse named Consul and Elagabalus, draped in silk and makeup, insisting on being called Empress. He marries 5 times, including a Vestal virgin illegal naturally, and offers gold to any doctor who can make him a woman. In modern terms, he's boldly gender non-conforming. In Rome, he's a toga-wrapped scandal. The air smells of perfume and outrage as he dances around a Syrian sun god's black stone, sidelining Jupiter and alienating senators. His parties are less banquet, more bacchanal, with Rome's elite clutching their pearls. By 222, the Praetorian Guard, daggers ever ready, has had enough. They cut him down at 18 alongside his mother, their bodies tossed into the Tiber like yesterday's trash. Was Elagabalus a visionary, or a whirlwind of bad choices? History leans toward the latter, but his short reign burns bright with defiance. Rome hit reset, but his legend lingers proof that too much flair can be fatal. Next, a queen dogged by a rumour wilder than reality. It's 1796, and Catherine the Great, Russia's iron-willed empress, rules an empire stretched wide under her sharp gaze. She's a titan, modernising laws, patronising arts, swapping letters with Voltaire, all while outmanoeuvring rivals in a man's world. But history loves its gossip, and Catherine's name drags a scandal that refuses to die. No, she didn't perish in a stable with a horse, despite what snickering nobles whispered. That tale cooked up by her enemies is pure 18th century tabloid trash, aimed to smear a woman who dared be both powerful and passionate. The truth, far quieter, almost mundane. At 67, Catherine collapses in her private quarters, mid-morning, struck by a stroke while on the privy. The air smells faintly of lavender and wax. Her attendants find her slumped life already gone. No drama, no spectacle, just a human end for a giant of history. Her lovers, sure, she had them as kings did before her, but her conquest was spun into slander. Her brilliance dimmed by a lie too juicy to forget. Russia mourns, but the horse rumour gallops on proof that a woman's legacy can be shackled by envy. Next time you hear a wild tale, think of Catherine and wonder what's really behind the whisper. Up next, an emperor whose death stays shrouded in mystery. Rewind to 392 AD, where the Roman Empire's western half simmers with plots and power plays. Emperor Valentinian, just 21, wears a crown he's barely held since toddlerhood. Puppeteered by General Arbogast, he's more figurehead than ruler, the palace air thick with tension and unspoken threats. You can picture him young and restless, pushing back against his handler, his voice sharp in marble halls. One morning he seeks solace in a bath steam curling around him, the water warm against his skin. Then silence. Servants find him floating lifeless, no marks, no blood, just an emperor drowned in a tub. Arbogast calls it suicide, a neat explanation for a messy problem. But historians squint at that. Valentinian was ambitious, clawing for control, hardly a man ready to quit. Murder whispered in Rome's shadows feels more likely, though no proof surfaces. The empire spirals into chaos, civil war brewing as Arbogast props up a new puppet. The bathtub mystery lingers a quiet end with loud ripples. No grand battle, no poison, just a young man, a tub, and questions that echo through centuries. Makes you wonder who held the strings and who cut them. Next, a poetess who turned words into strength. Imagine Argos, a sun-baked city in ancient Greece where olive trees sway and marble temples gleam. In a quiet courtyard, a girl named Telesilla lies frail, her breath shallow, her body betraying her since birth. The air carries sea salt and dust, but she's confined to linen-draped rooms, too weak to join the chatter of the agora or the laughter of festivals. You can see her pale and still, watching life through a veil of illness, her world as small as the flicker of oil lamps. In a place that worships strength, bronzed athletes, bold orators, Telesilla's fragility feels like a curse. But something stirs within her. Words become her refuge, spilling from her mind like water from a spring. She crafts verses soft at first, then fierce weaving hymns to Apollo's light, Artemis's grace, Athena's cunning. Poetry isn't just escape, it's defiance. Each line strengthens her, as if the muses themselves breathe life into her bones. Slowly her health steadies, maybe through rituals, maybe through purpose. Telesilla rises no longer just a sickly girl, but a poetess with a voice that hums like a taut lyre string. Her words begin to echo beyond her home, hinting at a legacy yet to unfold. Next, see how her voice shapes a city. Now picture Argos again, its streets alive with the hum of trade and the clink of bronze. Telesilla, once a shadow in her family's home, is a name on every tongue. Her hymns, sung by white-robed choruses at temple festivals, fill the air with reverence and fire. You can hear them, young women's voices rising under sun-scorched columns, praising Apollo's healing, Artemis's purity, Athena's strategy. These aren't just songs. They're a call to the soul, weaving Argive women into the city's mythic tapestry. In a world where men dominate the agora's debates, Telesilla's verses are a quiet rebellion, teaching daughters to stand tall to claim their place in the divine. Her poetry becomes medicine, not just for her own once fragile body, but for a city grown complacent, blind to the shadow of Sparta's spears. Each stanza she writes is a thread-stitching identity and defiance into Argos's heart. Her home, once a place of whispers, now hums with pilgrims seeking her words. Telesilla's not done yet, war looms, and her voice will soon ring louder, not in theatres but on battlefields, proving a poet's strength can outshine a warrior's blade. Next we cross rivers with ancient bridges. Close your eyes and wander to ancient China, where rivers carve silver paths through misty valleys. The air smells of damp earth and lotus blooms, and a stone bridge arches over the water, its curve soft as a poet's sigh. These bridges, built in the Tang and Song dynasties, aren't just crossings, they're philosophy in stone. You can feel the balance in their design, each slab laid with care, reflecting the Taoist dance of yin and yang. Picture stone lions guarding the ends, their carved gazes fierce yet serene, warding off spirits while welcoming travellers. The name's Longevity Bridge, awakening span whisper, promises of luck and wisdom. Scholars pause mid-crossing, gazing at the still water below their brushes, itching to capture the scene in verse. These bridges, often nestled near temples or gardens, aren't about conquering nature, but blending with it, their arches mirroring the sky's curve. To walk one is to step through harmony itself, a moment where earth, water and heaven hum in unison. No wonder poets and painters loved them, they're more than stone. They're a quiet song of order amid life's flow. Next, Rome's bridges roar with a different kind of ambition. Now stand in ancient Rome, where the Tiber River churns under a sky heavy with conquest. The Pons Fabricius, built in 62 BCE, spans the water, its stone arches solid as a legion's resolve. You can smell the dust of marble, and hear the clack of sandals on its surface still carrying feet 2 millennia later. Roman bridges aren't just paths, they're declarations of empire built to outlast floods, wars and time itself. Picture the genius of their arches' weight flowing evenly to the ground, or the pozzolanic concrete setting hard even underwater. These spans faced with limestone or marble often bear emperors' names carved deep, shouting glory to every passerby. Some, like the Pont du Gard, double as aqueducts towering over valleys' water and ambition flowing side by side. For legions, these bridges meant swift marches. For merchants, gold. For Rome, eternity. You can almost see the engineers' togas smudged plotting angles with ruthless precision. To cross a Roman bridge is to walk on conquest's bones, each step echoing an empire's unyielding will. Next, India's living bridges grow from the earth itself. Drift to Meghalaya, India, where monsoon rains lash emerald valleys and rivers rage like untamed spirits. Here, in the wettest corners of the ancient world, the Khasi and Jaintia peoples weave bridges not from stone or steel, but from living trees. Picture the ficus elastica, its roots coaxed over streams guided by hands patient as time itself. You can smell the damp moss, hear the drip of water, as villagers shape these roots using bamboo scaffolds and hollowed trunks, weaving them into spans that breathe and grow. A young bridge takes 15 years to hold weight, but once mature it strengthens with age roots thickening like a grandfather's resolve. These bridges don't rot or splinter. They're alive, curving over waterfalls like something from a dream blending into the jungle's pulse. A grandfather starts, one knowing his grandchildren will cross it. No blueprints needed, just tradition whispered through generations. To walk a root bridge is to feel the earth's heartbeat underfoot, a slow, defiant song of community and nature's partnership. Next, Mesopotamia's bridges rise from mud and ingenuity. Step into ancient Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates slice through desert, nourishing cities like Babylon with trade and life. These rivers also divide, and where there's division, someone builds a bridge. You can feel the sun's heat, smell the clay and asphalt mortar, as Mesopotamians craft spans from mud bricks, timber, and sheer cunning. Picture Babylon's Euphrates linked by a movable bridge of wooden planks, atop boats tied with papyrus ropes. By day it ferries carts and traders. By night it's dismantled to thwart enemies. These bridges aren't grand like Rome's, but strategic, built low to weather floods, or raised on brick piers driven into silt. No marble here, just practical genius bundling reeds or piling clay to carry caravans of grain and lapis lazuli. Kings know whoever holds the bridge rules the city, so each span is a lifeline rebuilt with the river's moods in mind. To cross one is to walk on commerce's pulse, connecting shores and empires with quiet resilience. Next, Greece's bridges whisper balance in stone. Wander to ancient Greece, where hills bloom with time and the air hums with the chatter of philosophers. Here bridges don't shout like Rome's, but murmur with elegance. Picture the Arcadico Bridge in the Peloponnese, born around 1300 BCE, its limestone boulders stacked without mortar, still bearing footsteps today. You can smell the dust of ages, feel the cool stone underhand as it spans a modest stream. Greek bridges, like their temples, marry form and function. Subtle arches, precise angles, blending into the landscape like a poet's metre. They're not about vast conquests, but connection linking villages or guiding pilgrims to Delphi's oracle or Olympia's games. Some built of timber and stone boast drainage or guardrails, their symmetry framed by sky and sea. To cross one is to step through balance, a quiet nod to the gods of order and craft. No imperial fanfare, just stone whispering resilience as if saying we hold because we fit. Next, Egypt's bridges carry more than feet, they carry souls. Drift to ancient Egypt, where the Nile's pulse feeds a civilization of gods and grain. Boats are the highways here, but when land demands crossing, Egyptians build with purpose. Picture a stone causeway sloping from the Nile to Giza's pyramids, its blocks heavy with sacred intent. You can hear the chant of priests, smell the frankincense as Pharaoh's mummies roll toward eternity. These aren't bridges in the usual sense, but paths between worlds, ferrying chariots, offerings and souls. Smaller spans, flat stones over canals, wooden walkways at Deir el-Medina knit the land's watery maze, practical yet precise, aligned with the Nile's flow. No towering arches, just quiet conduits for grain pilgrims or temple rites. Each crossing feels like a ritual, the desert's heat pressing down the river's whisper, urging you on. Egypt's bridges, whether stone or idea, link life to death, mortal to divine their simplicity, a hymn to the eternal. Next, we hear the first notes of ancient music. step back to the Paleolithic, where the world is raw and alive with sound, the crackle of fire, the drip of rain, the rustle of leaves in a restless wind. You're crouched in a cave, the air thick with smoke and earth shadows dancing on stone walls. Early humans wrapped in hides don't just hear these rhythms, they mimic them. Picture a hand carving a flute from a bird's bone holes, drilled with care to shape breath into melody. These flutes found in German caves are over 40,000 years old, not toys but tools of the heart. You can almost hear it, a soft haunting note echoing in the dark, a lullaby for a child, a chant for the hunt or a wail for the lost. Clapping hands, striking logs, shaking seed-filled rattles, these are the first drum-syncing tribes for work or war. Music isn't just sound, it's memory binding stories before words had ink. Each note carries grief, hope, or the sacred a bridge between the living and the unseen. To play is to speak with the earth itself, a pulse older than cities. Next, Mesopotamia's music weaves order into the divine. Now stand in ancient Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates cradle cities like Sumer and Babylon. The air hums with incense and the pluck of lyres, their strings stretched over gold-adorned frames, bull-headed and sacred. You're in a temple, the scent of clay and myrrh, heavy as musicians temple-trained. Revered play for gods and kings. These aren't mere tunes, they're cosmic order mirroring the stars' dance. Picture a clay tablet from Ugarit 1400 BCE, etched with the world's oldest notation hymns with lyrics and picture script for the divine. Lyres, flutes and drums pulse through rituals, coronations and feasts, each note precise tying earth to heaven. In markets, minstrels strum for coins, but in temples, priestesses sing to Inanna, their voices carrying prayers skyward. Music here isn't art alone, it's structure, power, memory. Numbers, matter, intervals echo the cosmos's math, a harmony Babylonians believed kept seasons spinning. To hear a lyre's wail is to feel a civilization's soul carved in sound, binding mud brick cities to eternity. Next, Egypt's music flows like the Nile itself. Drift to ancient Egypt, where the Nile's murmur is a heartbeat, and music flows like its waters sacred and vital. You're in a temple courtyard, the air rich with lotus and myrrh, as priestesses shake sistrums, their jingle waking the gods. Picture harps angular or curved, their gut strings humming under deft fingers, or flutes carved from reeds singing at sunrise to greet Ra. These sounds, etched in tomb murals from 2500 BCE, aren't mere entertainment, they're magic. Egyptians believe music heals the sick, calms deities, and guides souls to the afterlife. You can hear it a hymn for Osiris, its tones precise, aligning with divine will. In markets, drummers and clappers pulse through festivals, women leading with wails at funerals or dances in joy. Hieroglyphs name moods hes for adoration, tiyu for grief, making music the soul's scaffolding. From pharaohs to farmers, every rite has its sound, a chant or strum to mark birth, death or prayer. To play in Egypt is to weave life's thread, each note a step toward eternity. Next, Greece's music strikes a cosmic chord. Step into ancient Greece, where music isn't just heard but felt as a mirror of the cosmos. You're in Athens, the air sharp with olive and dust, as a boy plucks a lyre, its strings tied to Apollo's grace. This isn't mere practice, it's education shaping soul and state. Picture the kithara granda strumming at festivals, or the aulos, its double reeds, piercing tragedies guiding choruses through Oedipus's doom. Music here is math and medicine, Pythagoras, linking notes to ratios, 2, 1, 3, 2. Claiming planets hum a harmony too vast for ears. You can almost see Plato Toga askew arguing music molds virtue, certain scales, uplifting others risky. In theatres, songs weave fate's threads, each metre a heartbeat of the divine. From street buskers to Ionian thinkers, music's a muse-kissed pursuit, not just played, but studied its modes shaping morals. To strum a lyre is to brush reality's fabric. To sing is to join the gods' order. Greece's notes don't just sound, they question, heal, and echo the stars. Next, Rome's music marches to a louder beat. March into ancient Rome, where the empire's pulse throbs through marble and blood-soaked sand. You're in a bustling forum, the air thick with wine and ambition, as a cornu, a curved brass horn, blares across a legion's camp, its sharp notes slicing through chaos to signal attack or retreat. Music here isn't just art. It's survival, loud and unapologetic. Picture the tibia, a reedy double pipe wailing at temple sacrifices, or the hydraulis, a water organ roaring in arenas where gladiators clash. These sounds, born from Greek and Etruscan roots, are Rome's soundtrack, practical, theatrical, inescapable. At feasts, enslaved performers strum citharas, their soft strings a status flex for elite hosts, while dancers sway to castanets clack. In temples, sacred calm and chants bind mortals to gods, their rhythms warding off doom. You can hear it trumpets at triumphs, drums in markets, a cacophony of control and glory. Rome doesn't ponder music's soul like Greece, it wields it from battlefield to banquet, each note a cog in the empire's machine. To hear Rome's music is to feel its iron grip pulsing through stone and spectacle. Next, India's music hums with ancient devotion. Wander to the Indus Valley, where ancient cities like Mohenjo-Daro hum under a bronze sky, their streets alive with trade and rhythm. You're near a river, the air heavy with silt and spice as a terracotta flute's notes drift its holes spaced for perfect pitch. Archaeologists unearth drums and shell trumpets, while figurines of dancers mid-sway hint at a beat pulsing through communal rites. This is 2500 BCE music not yet written, but felt raw, sacred, a heartbeat of celebration. Fast forward to Vedic times, and the air shifts to sandalwood and chant. Picture priests intoning the Samaveda, their voices weaving melodic patterns to hold the cosmos steady. These aren't songs, but sonic formulas, each syllable a thread in reality's fabric. By 200 BCE, the Natya Shastra maps ragas melodic modes and talas rhythmic cycles played on veenas or mridangam drums. You can hear it a temple's drone, a court's intricate pulse music, as devotion vibration, a bridge from mortal to divine. India's sound isn't inked on clay, it's in breathbeat and eternity, resonating from Indus flutes to Vedic hymns. Next, China's music aligns with the stars. Step into ancient China, where the air carries the scent of pine and incense and music is the universe's heartbeat made audible. You're in a Zhou dynasty courtyard, 1000 BCE, where stone chimes clink like falling water, each note tuned to the 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, water. Picture a guqin, its 7 strings stretched over lacquered wood, played by a scholar alone, fingers brushing notes that drift like wind over bamboo. This isn't just music. It's philosophy, rooted in Confucian and Taoist ideals of balance. You can hear the pentatonic scale, 5 fluid tones evoking rivers and stars played on bone flutes, or bronze bells during ancestral rites. Confucius himself said, "Music perfects the soul, a well-tuned state reflected in gentle melodies, not discord." In court, sheng mouth organs and drums mark ceremonies, each sound a prayer for harmony between heaven, earth, and humanity. To play is to align with cosmic order, every silence as vital as the note before. China's music doesn't entertain, it teaches, breathes, binds the world's rhythm to your own. Next, Hebrew music lifts prayers to the divine. Enter the ancient Hebrew world where the air hums with dust and devotion, and music is a bridge to God. You're in Jerusalem's first temple, 900 BCE, the scent of cedar and sacrifice. Thick as Levite musicians strike harps and lyres, their strings singing psalms of sorrow and triumph. Picture David, warrior king, calming Saul's rage with a harp's soft pluck, or Miriam dancing by the Red Sea, tambourine in hand, her song a cry of freedom. These aren't mere melodies, they're offerings, every note a covenant with the divine. Trumpets blare for offering, cymbals clash for sacred shifts structuring festivals and time itself. You can hear the psalms, poetic prayers chanted with trembling voices, their rhythms etched in hearts even in Babylonian exile. By rivers of sorrow, Hebrews sang of Zion music their defiance against despair. No marble halls needed, just breath and faith, carrying songs through centuries. To sing in this tradition is to speak with God, each chord a vow, each silence a hope. Next time you hum a tune, think of these notes still echoing in synagogues today. Picture this. It's 1325, and you're jolted awake in a medieval village that makes your worst camping trip look like a luxury spa. Forget Hollywood's shining knights and fairy tale castles. The Middle Ages are a gritty, grimy fight for survival, where you're more likely to wrestle fleas than dragons. If you're cozy in bed right now, hit that like button and subscribe. Only if you're vibing with this journey, and drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's wild to see who's joining us from across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe flip on a fan for that soft hum, and let's dive into a world that'll make you kiss your Wi-Fi router in gratitude. You blink awake, sprawled on a straw mattress that's more bug than bed, the air thick with the stench of damp hay and last week's goat. It's not a bedroom, it's a wooden hut, one room for you, your family, a couple of chickens and an army of insects throwing a rave. The church bell clangs outside a relentless medieval alarm clock that doesn't care if you got 3 hours of sleep. Your blanket, a wool slab unwashed since the last king's coronation, weighs as much as a small pony caked with grime and regret. No memory foam, no fluffy pillows, just a scratchy pile of misery that smells like it was dragged through a barn because it was. You're 22, which is basically senior citizen status here, and your body's already filing complaints. Your spine creaks like a haunted gate, your knees crunch like a sack of gravel, and stretching feels like a personal attack. The air's so cold it bites, and your bare feet hit a floor that's either slick with last night's rain thanks to the leaky thatched roof or crusty with mystery substances you don't want to identify. Privacy, a myth. Your family's snoring beside you, maybe a random cousin who's been crashing since the harvest, all sharing this open concept nightmare. The smell's a brutal mix of stale ale, human sweat, and something you hope isn't mould, but deep down know it is. This is your morning in medieval Europe and it's not even 6 a.m. yet. You're never alone, fleas rodents, and the weight of survival are your constant crew. Congrats, you're alive. The bad news. That's the highlight of your day. So pull yourself from this haystack of horrors, because nature's calling, and it's about to get a whole lot worse. You've clawed your way out of bed, but now nature's screaming and it's not asking politely. If you're picturing a sparkling bathroom with fluffy towels snap out of it, this is 1325 and hygiene is a word nobody's invented yet. Your toilet's a wooden bucket tucked behind the hut already brimming, because Uncle Wolfstarn had a wild night with some dodgy turnips. The smell could knock a vulture off a corpse. You hold your breath, do what you gotta do, then brace yourself, toss it into the street. Yup, the street. You're supposed to yell Gardez-vous old French for watch out below, but nobody dodges fast enough. Medieval towns or open sewers a charming stew of human waste animal droppings and liquids you'd rather not name. If you're in a fancy town with public latrines, don't get excited. You're shoulder to shoulder with strangers in a reeking outhouse, making awkward small talk while praying the wooden bench doesn't collapse. Ventilation's a cruel joke and toilet paper never heard of it. You're wiping with straw leaves or a scrap of wool if you're feeling bougie. Sometimes you just don't. Handshakes aren't a thing yet, and now you know why. Even in a castle it's no picnic. You've got a garderobe, a hole in the wall dropping straight into the moat grate until enemies climb up the waste chute. Yeah, that happened. Talk about a backdoor invasion. Every trip to relieve yourself is cold, public, and vaguely humiliating, like a twisted social experiment. One wrong step on a slick path and you're face first in the street's river. You stumble back, itching from fleas, your hands gritty, and realise you haven't even tackled your teeth yet. Spoiler, that's not going to be fun either. Welcome to medieval hygiene, where every choice feels like a dare and you're just trying not to lose your dignity or your breakfast. You've survived the medieval bathroom gauntlet, so surely you deserve a reward like a warm hearty breakfast to fuel your day. Think again. It's 1325 and comfort food is as mythical as a unicorn. You shuffle to the fire, squatting on a dirt floor that's seen more action than a battlefield, and stare into a wooden bowl of something. Meat pottage, the medieval equivalent of a culinary crime scene. This gloopy grey stew's been simmering in the same pot for days, maybe weeks. Tossing in whatever scraps you scrounge, grains a sad turnip, maybe a bean if the harvest didn't betray you. It's less a meal and more a science experiment gone wrong, with a taste that lingers like regret. On the side there's bread, but don't get excited. This rye or barley loaf is harder than your landlord's heart bulked up with sawdust or ground acorns, because wheat's for nobles who don't know your name. You don't slice it, you wrestle it, praying your teeth survive the encounter. For a drink, no coffee's brewing, no orange juice is chilling. Instead, you gulp weak ale breakfast beer because the water's a parasite party you're not invited to. Kids sip it too, their little faces grim as they chug survival juice. Meat or cheese? That's a Sunday dream, and only if the Lord's in a rare generous mood. Fresh fruit? Only if it's fall and hasn't already turned into wine. Every bite's a gamble. That bread might chip a tooth, the pottage could hide a rat's midnight snack. Spices like pepper are worth more than your hut, so flavour comes from onions, maybe salt, and a hefty dose of despair. You chew slowly, not because you're savouring, but because you're negotiating with your stomach to keep it down. This isn't breakfast, it's a test of endurance. You swallow, wipe your gritty hands on your tunic and brace for the day ahead, already dreaming of a time when food doesn't feel like punishment. Your stomach's grumbling through the pottage ordeal, and now it's time to face the medieval fashion disaster that is getting dressed. Your wardrobe's not a closet, it's a single outfit. A rough wool tunic or linen shift you've worn so long, it's practically a second skin. Seasonal trends. Forget it. This is your look until it disintegrates or gives you a rash that sends you to the priest for an exorcism. Underwear's a luxury, maybe a linen undertunic if you're lucky, but most days you're going commando under layers of scratchy, sweat-soaked wool stitched by someone who thought seam meant suggestion. Washing clothes is a fantasy. No soap, no washing machine, just a river you'd have to haul water from heat over a fire and scrub with ashes if the sun's even out, which it isn't. Your tunic's stiff with stains, smelling like a pigsty left to fester, and you're not much better. Shoes. If you've got 'em, they're untreated leather barely holding together, offering less support than a broken promise. Most peasants go barefoot, trudging through mud dung and sharp rocks that turn every step into a medieval minefield. Your skin's screaming. Fleas and lice have set up permanent residence, throwing parties in your armpits while bedbugs nibble your legs. Everyone's itchy nobles, monks, even the kids are walking insect farms. You scratch with a stick, a spoon, anything, and nobody blinks. A rash. That's just your body's way of saying, welcome to the club. No dermatologist, no cream, just you and your scabies sidekick for the next 6 months. You pull on this misery costume already sweating and itching and step outside where the real work's waiting to break you. In medieval Europe, getting dressed isn't about style. It's about surviving the outfit. You've choked down your pottage and wrestled into your itchy tunic, but now it's time to face your morning smile or what's left of it. In 1325, oral hygiene is about as real as a dragon's dental plan. No toothbrush, no toothpaste, no floss, and definitely no minty mouthwash to save you from the battlefield that is your mouth. You might chew a twig or swish some vinegar if you're feeling fancy, but most days your teeth are on their own, and they're losing the war. By your mid-20s, your smile's more haunted crypt than Hollywood's sparkle with cavities carving out real estate and gums swollen like they're staging a revolt. That gritty rye bread and sticky pottage. They're not just food, they're tooth assassins leaving decay in their wake. Sugar's creeping into noble diets, rotting their teeth faster, but you're not spared fermented bread, and years of chewing hard loaves do the job slowly but surely. Toothaches are your new normal, a dull throb that feels like the weather always there, always miserable. Pain bad enough to make you consider yanking the offender yourself. That's not a joke. The local barber surgeon, yep, the same guy, hacking your hair, doubles as your dentist, wielding an iron hook by candlelight with all the finesse of a blacksmith. No anesthesia, just a prayer and a scream. An infected tooth isn't just pain, it's a death sentence waiting to happen. Without antibiotics, a bad molar can spiral into sepsis, turning a cavity into your funeral. Kissing. Good luck halitosis is the medieval perfume, and everyone's wearing it. Nobody's judging your smile, though. They're too busy sizing up your land or livestock. Your mouth's a wreck, and you've got no choice but to grit your rotting teeth and keep going. Because in medieval Europe, dental care isn't about prevention. It's about surviving the pain long enough to make it to lunch. Your teeth are throbbing, but there's no time to sulk work's calling, and in 1325 it's a brutal master. If you're one of the 90% scraping by as a peasant, your job's simple: don't die while slaving for a lord who wouldn't pick you out of a lineup. No office, no coffee breaks, just sunrise to sunset labour 6 days a week. Sundays off, unless the harvest's late, or your toes turning black from an infection you can't afford to care about. Your tools: a splintery wooden hoe, a rusty sickle, and whatever's left of your spine. You're ploughing fields by hand, or if you're rich with an ox that's as stubborn as the mud you're knee-deep in. You dig ditches, sow seeds, pull weeds, and haul water until your back's screaming and your hands are raw. Tired. Nobody cares. Mental Health Day. That's a fever dream. If you're a woman, you're not just in the fields, you're cooking, cleaning, spinning wool, and dodging your husband's lice while keeping the kids alive. Kids? They're working by age 5, clutching tiny rakes and dreaming of not catching the flu. Not a farmer. Maybe you're a blacksmith or tanner, choking on smoke or animal guts in a shed that's one spark away from a fireball. Pay barely enough to eat. Perks, blisters, and the occasional near-death experience. Break a bone, tough luck, fever. Chug some warm ale and keep swinging. Stop working, and you don't eat. Medieval Europe's got no safety net, just a quick replacement if you keel over. You grip your shovel, ignore the pain shooting up your arm and keep digging, because this isn't a career, it's a slow-motion fight to stay alive. The sun's climbing, and the fields don't care about your dreams. In this world, labour isn't a choice, it's the only thing keeping you from the grave. You've barely survived the morning's labour, your hands blistered and your back begging for mercy, but now the medieval weather's here to remind you who's really in charge. In 1325 there's no thermostat, no insulation, just a world where the sky seems personally offended by your existence. Winter's a beast. Your hut's wooden walls have gaps wide enough to toss a chicken through, and the cloth windows let in more frost than light. The hearth's fire is a sad flicker, because firewood's worth more than your weekly wages, and stealing a stick from the Lord's forest could get you hanged. You huddle under your grimy wool tunic, breath fogging nose frozen, and fingers stiff as icicles, wondering if your toes will survive until spring. Summer's no better. It turns your hut into a sweaty clay oven. No fans, no breeze, just you baking in layers of wool you can't peel off without scandalising the village or inviting a swarm of flies. The sun's relentless and there's no sunscreen, just straw hats you weave yourself looking like a desperate scarecrow. Heatstroke's just a bad turn, and the fields don't care if you're dizzy. Mosquitoes hum in your ears all night, and the stench of last week's goat stew festers in the corner. Whether you're shivering through winter's bite or melting in summer's glare, your clothes itch, your food's grim, and work never stops. Medieval climate control. It's a cruel joke just to you the elements, and a prayer to make it through the day without frostbite or a sunburn that feels like divine punishment. You've barely survived the morning's labour, your hands blistered and your back begging for mercy. But now the medieval weather's here to remind you who's really in charge. In 1325 there's no thermostat, no insulation, just a world where the sky seems personally offended by your existence. Winter's a beast, your hut's wooden walls have gaps wide enough to toss a chicken through, and the cloth windows let in more frost than light. The hearth's fire is a sad flicker, because firewood's worth more than your weekly wages, and stealing a stick from the Lord's forest could get you hanged. You huddle under your grimy wool tunic, breath fogging nose frozen and fingers stiff as icicles, wondering if your toes will survive until spring. Summer's no better, it turns your hut into a sweaty clay oven. No fans, no breeze, just you baking in layers of wool you can't peel off without scandalising the village or inviting a swarm of flies. The sun's relentless, and there's no sunscreen, just straw hats you weave yourself, looking like a desperate scarecrow. Heatstroke's just a bad turn, and the fields don't care if you're dizzy. Mosquitoes hum in your ears all night, and the stench of last week's goat stew festers in the corner. Whether you're shivering through winter's bite or melting in summer's glare, your clothes itch, your food's grim, and work never stops. Medieval climate control. It's a cruel joke just you the elements, and a prayer to make it through the day without frostbite or a sunburn that feels like divine punishment. You're parched from dodging deadly water and battered from the fields, but now a cough's creeping up, or maybe that rash from your flea-infested tunic's gone rogue. Time to see a doctor. Nope, it's 1325, and medieval medicine's less about healing and more like a theology class with a side of torture. Got a fever, a broken arm, or a suspicious sneeze. It's all because your humours, blood phlegm, yellow bile, black bile are out of whack like a soup recipe gone demonic. The cure? Bloodletting? That's right, your local barber, fresh from trimming beards, grabs a dull blade or a leech and drains your excess blood into a bowl. Feeling faint yet? You should be. Sad or anxious. Too much black bile time for a laxative purge or some prayers while everyone side-eyes you like you're halfway to the coffin. Break a bone. Good luck. Surgery's a knife-wielding free-for-all done by candlelight with tools that haven't been cleaned since the last crusade. No anaesthesia, just a scream and a prayer. Germs. Nobody's heard of them. Disease comes from bad air or God's wrath over that time you cursed the cow. Stomachache. Must be sinful thoughts. Confess, puke, repeat. If things get worse, they'll slap on more leeches, maybe sprinkle some crushed beetles and call the priest for last rites just in case. If you survive, it's a miracle and the doctor takes all the credit while the leech gets a promotion. Medicine here isn't science. It's a gamble where the house always wins and the house is death. You limp back to your hut, fever spiking, praying you don't croak before dawn. In medieval Europe, getting sick isn't a setback. It's a one-way ticket to the afterlife, courtesy of a leech and a bad theory. After surviving the medieval ER, your stomach's howling for something to quiet it down. Too bad dinner in 1325 isn't a meal, it's a survival challenge. Food preservation's a pipe dream, no fridges, no freezers, just salt, smoke, or a prayer that winter's cold doesn't fail you. Got meat lucky you, but it's been hanging for days, swarmed by flies dunked in sketchy brine, and probably nibbled by a rat. Bread's your lifeline, but it's no artisan sourdough. In lean years, it's stretched with bark, clay, or sawdust, turning every bite into a gritty gamble. Rye bread's the worst ergot fungus can sneak in, sparking hallucinations, convulsions, or a one-way trip to the grave. It's like eating LSD with a side of tetanus. Vegetables. Turnips always turnips boiled, mashed or haunting your pottage like a ghost of flavour past. Fruit's a fleeting fall treat, rotting faster than your dreams of a better life. Dairy's dicey milk sours in hours, and cheese is a bacterial party you're invited to at your own risk. Spices, peppers pricier than your soul, so you're stuck with onions, maybe salt, and a sprinkle of misery. Every meal's a health hazard, but it's also a political minefield. Poach a rabbit from the Lord's land and you're risking a fine jail or a noose. Dinner could literally get you hanged. You sit by a flickering fire, spooning grey stew that tastes like wet socks, each bite a leap of faith. You chew, you swallow, you pray it stays down, because in medieval Europe food doesn't nourish it, dares you to keep breathing. And tomorrow you'll do it all again, assuming you survive the night. You've barely digested your questionable stew, and the day's grind is wearing you thin, but don't think you can kick back yet God's watching. And so's the village priest along with your nosy neighbour Agnes, who'd snitch faster than you can say heresy. In 1325, religion isn't just a Sunday hobby. It's the air you breathe, the chains you wear, and the tax you can't dodge. The church runs everything, your calendar, your laws, even your thoughts. It's like a spiritual landlord who's always hiking the rent and you're perpetually behind. Church bells clang at dawn, noon, and dusk, not because you're forgetful, but because skipping prayers is a sin that could land you in hot water, eternal or otherwise. Miss a mass, that's a sin. Eat meat on Friday, sin. Dream about your neighbour's wife, double sin, and the priest's got a sermon ready to make you sweat. Hell's not abstract here. It's a vivid horror show of fire, rivers boiling blood, and demons with pitchforks painted in gory detail to keep you in line. You can't read the Bible, it's in Latin, a language for monks and nobles who don't shovel dung like you, so you lean on the priest's word. If he says you're bad harvests, because you didn't pray hard enough, you're on your knees grovelling. Tithes non-negotiable. A tenth of your wheat eggs or nothing if you're broke, leaving you spiritually and financially gutted. Holidays. Holy days are no vacation. They're for fasting, confessing, and reminding yourself joy's a trap. Question the church. That's a one-way ticket to the stake for heresy, a drowning for witchcraft, or a flogging for blasphemy. So you chant, you bow, you pray. Your soul might escape this mud-caked life for paradise, assuming the priest doesn't hold a grudge. In medieval Europe, God might be merciful, but the church is a stickler, and every step you take is a tightrope over damnation. If you thought scraping by as a peasant was rough, try doing it as a woman in 1325. It's like playing survival on hard mode with no saves and extra traps. You're wading through the same filth, hunger and fear as the men, but pile on childbirth subservience and a society that treats you like a ghost unless you're useful. From the moment you're born, your path's carved in stone, marry young, pop out, kids serve your husband and die exhausted. Education. Unless you're a noble nun, your brain's on lockdown once you learn to churn butter or mend a tunic. Married at 12, pregnant by 14. That's not weird, it's Tuesday. And love's got nothing to do with it. It's all about land, livestock and deals your dad made. Once married, you're your husband's property. Your job's to make heirs, cook, clean, spin wool and keep quiet. Complain. You're a nag or worse a witch, and that label comes with a free drowning or bonfire depending on the village's mood. Childbirth's a death lottery. No prenatal care, no clean tools, just a midwife praying over you as you bleed out on a straw bed. Survive 10 pregnancies. You're a legend. Most don't make it past 2, and the work never stops. Nurse a baby, tend the fields. Dodge your husband's fists, all while lice throw a party in your hair. Unmarried, you're suspicious. Widowed, vulnerable. Speak up. That's a witch's tongue talking. Even in church, you're second-rate. Nuns, they're silent, locked in convents worth less than monks. You're expected to endure, obey, and suffer with a smile, because somehow women have to make misery look graceful. In medieval Europe, being a woman isn't just hard, it's a relentless test of how much you can take before you break all, while the world pretends you were never there. You're still reeling from the church's iron grip and the extra weight of being a woman, but don't get too comfortable. Violence in 1325 is as common as fleas and twice as nasty. Forget any notions of a peaceful medieval